Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Carrie Linklater. I'm your chairperson today. And I'm joined on the panel. To my immediate left is Mr. Maurice Theron, and my far left is Mr. Ed Sawatsky. Our assessor today is Ms. Lindsay Wareham, and our admin secretary is Michelle Neepin. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value, classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with your board order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applicants have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. And as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And if I could just ask everybody to make sure your cell phones are turned off. Thank you. And good morning. And good morning to you.
Can you state your full name, please?
Lindsay Wareham.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Are you sworn in or affirmative? That's fine. Can you state your full name, please?
Marshall.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
And our first property is 883 Sherbrooke Street.
Thank you. We're looking at file number 18-663. The roll number is 13-070-289-000. As stated, the address is 883 Sherbrooke Street, and we're recommending to maintain the 2019 assessed value of $420,000. This is a surface parking lot located on the southwest corner of Sherbrooke Street and Elgin Avenue in close proximity to the Health Sciences Center, and it has 25 stalls.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro.
We're going to ask that you confirm the assessment.
Thank you.
Right?
We'd like to proceed to 655 Elgin.
Thank you. The file number is 18-662. The roll number is 13-096-061-000. As stated, the address is 655 Elgin Avenue. This is a surface parking lot located on the northwest corner of Sherbrooke Street and Elgin Avenue in close proximity to the Health Sciences Center, and it is a surface parking lot with 25 stalls, and I'm recommending to maintain the 2019 assessed value of $420,000.
Mr. Navarro. Confirm. Thank you. And 894 Sherbrooke Street.
894 Sherbrooke Street, his roll number, or file number 18-664, roll number 13-072-103-000. As stated, the address is 894 Sherbrooke Street. This is a service parking lot with 18 stalls located on the northwest corner of Sherbrooke Street and Elgin Avenue in close proximity to the Health Sciences Center, and I'm recommending to maintain the 2019 assessed value of $302,000.
And Mr. McGrath. Thank you. And 790 William.
William Avenue has file number 18-615, roll number 13-096-035-300. This is a surface parking lot located on the southeast corner of William Avenue and Tecumseh Street. It has 117 outdoor surface parking stalls, and I'm recommending to maintain the 2019 assessed value of $1,966,000.
And Mr. McGrath.
Should I?
If you want to.
Okay. There's likely a supplementary coming in the near future on this property, so we're just gonna ask for it to be confirmed at this point.
Thank you for coming.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I request a brief 5-minute break?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Uh, 348 Elgin Avenue.
Yes.
Step forward, please.
Yeah, we sworn in our front. Can I start without the Bible? Can you state your full name, please? Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Have a seat.
Thank you. We're looking at 348 Elgin Avenue. The file number is 18-198. The roll number is 1307012000. This is a surface parking lot located on the south side of Elgin Avenue, just west of Adelaide Street. It is located in close proximity to Red River College, where Tim Hortons is. This is a surface parking lot that has 40 outdoor parking stalls. I'm recommending to maintain the 2019 assessed value of $672,000. If you turn to page 2, you'll see aerial photos of the subject property as previously described. On page 3, you'll see subject property photos. On page 4, you'll see income and expense and sale history information. On page 5, you'll see the income workup for the subject property. As stated, this is 40 outdoor surface parking stalls. We've applied a modeled net monthly unit rent of $70 per stall for an annual net rent of $33,600 with a 5% cap rate for a value of $672,000. On the bottom of my page 5, you'll see my comparables. They range from $61.59 upwards of $129.43. Comparables number 5 and 6 are located in an inferior location to the subject property. They are also gravel lots and they are quite small, and they're on Galt Street, sort of out of the way of any sort of amenities like the convention center, Red River, things like that. The closest proximity comparable is comparable number 7 at 365 William Avenue, and it's $125.90 a stall. If you happen to look over here, I can show you on the map on page 2. This is 365 William Avenue. On page 6, you'll see the income valuation summary for the subject property. On page 7, you'll see cap rate information. This is just general cap rate information for a number of property types that the City of Winnipeg has. On page 8, you'll see Municipal Assessment Act information. On page 9, you'll see the income mailer submitted for the subject property. And on page 13, you'll see the subject property details. This is operated by Impark. They charge $145 a stall and $160 a stall gross per month. The $160 a stall per month is waitlisted. On page 14, you'll notice that the number of spaces is 40, which matches the number that we have. And on page 15 and 16, this was appealed for 2018, but it was dismissed due to the non-appearance by the applicant. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, sir, to the assessor on what she's just presented?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sawatsky.
Is this lot paved or what condition is it in?
It's a gravel lot.
Gravel.
It's a gravel lot and it's electrified.
Okay. Is the zoning relevant in these circumstances?
With respect to the zoning, because of the way the city assesses properties in the downtown, this is located in what is considered our inner downtown or our outer downtown parking model. So the zoning doesn't really have an effect on how the city assesses it because it has been a parking lot for a number of years. With respect to the zoning, because I would have to look, it's character zoning, so I believe parking is permitted for character zoning.
No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Perry?
Yes, I see on page 4, there's a sworn value of a sale history, December 29, 2015, at $563,000. Was that looked into?
That is a non-arm's length sale between the owner and I believe, and he can correct me on this, I believe it was his mother's parking lot, and then it was just a title transfer to himself. And I believe that value was a previously Board of Revision reduced value, so they just took the assessed value from a previous cycle.
Okay. Which brings me to page 15 as well. I see there's the order, but I don't see any amounts there.
Oh, this was the 2018 Board of Revision order, and the applicant wasn't actually able to show up for
And
whatever
what was the
reason.
amount that was confirmed there?
Well, because I believe it was dismissed, so there wasn't really a confirmation, but in 2018, the value was $672,000.
That's what I wanted to know. Okay, 40 stalls. Have we got, I might have missed this, is there electric plugs on this one?
I believe so, yes.
That's all, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wareham, I'm assuming page 5 of your brief is model?
The top part,
Yeah,
correct.
model driven, okay. And did you state earlier that this is close to Red River?
Yes.
Okay.
Not the Culinary Institute, but Red River College as in the actual college.
Yeah. So you've stated this is gravel.
Yes.
Is there any differential in terms of the cap rate because gravel over paved?
No, we apply a 5% cap rate for our inner downtown and our outer downtown parking model across the board. Based on the information I've looked at, you can have a gravel lot that produces much higher. More of the defining factors is location based. So if it's close to amenities where people want to be parking, that typically defines it. So based on gravel or not gravel, it doesn't always really show a difference. You can have a lot of gravel lots that are producing higher incomes than paved lots.
And to the best of your knowledge, these all have outlets?
I believe so.
Okay, well, we can ask the applicant. Just one quick question. No, I'll leave it to the applicant, that's fine. Sir, if you'd like to give us your presentation.
Organize it was nicely, yes. The city did. I guess the essential part of it is a historical thing. We've had the parking lot for a long time. And we rented it to the police officers. And so they had a great deal on parking because my father believed that they do a great job and they should be given a deal, which the lady here will agree. Or past times that have been here, she's advised me to charge more. So finally succumbed to her decisions, her advice, and I hired a parking company. The idea is that they're able to manage it. And I talked to all of them and I said, this company I chose in part, and I have no problems with them at all. They do a great job and they're very transparent. And so they went to manage the parking, applied their model. They had a waiting list for people to come and park and all those sorts of things. Well, what happened, and so the first year ran really well, and then the city moved out all my customers. The police, they moved them somewhere else. So now I've got a piece of land, and my customers are gone, the customer base, in fact, for that whole community. Now, one would think that the emergence of Red River College would be a ready source of customers, but it's not. One, it's seasonal. Secondly, as I showed in my revenue summary, this is the revenue summary from Impart from 2015 to 2017. There was a 45% decline in the revenue. And that's because the customers aren't there. I'm not complaining as a guy that has a business, the business running a parking lot says, yeah, you get ups and downs. But all of the previous assessed values were based on what the parking lot was producing, and now it cannot produce anymore. It's been continually declining, and I think that the assessed value should be reduced. That's what I think. And these are real numbers on the decline. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at the last one. And so what I submitted then was a little bit speculative because in part did not have the full numbers for the year, but now I have them, and I see it's a 45% decline over since 2015, which was the high year, which in part was able to get more money out of it, and then it kept on declining. And from a business point of view, in terms of the income of the property, it's not earning the same amount. Now, people would say, well, there's no guy here who's complaining he's not making this much money, but that's the reality. And I know that the assessor doesn't agree with my way of comparing. I go to all the other parking lots in the area and I say, what's the parking lot worth per square foot? Because the only thing that piece of land is worth is its value per square foot, because you can't build anything on it. It is only 150 feet wide, 150 feet long, and 75 feet wide. A house costs about, I would say, around $300,000 to build. And you have to buy the property first, so you put 3 houses on it, and then you try to rent it at the rates that you get in the neighborhood, and you can't recover your investment. I mean, it's just from a business standpoint, the only thing that it's worth is value as a business, as a parking lot. Other than that, you have a vacant piece of land.
Okay.
And I know there's a problem that the city doesn't like parking lots. I know it. The reality is, and I've lived in Toronto, I've lived in other cities where they've had parking lots in the city, and I've also worked in the industry, real estate industry. A piece of property is only worth what it can produce, and if the value of the properties, if you can't afford to put anything on the property other than use it as a vacant piece of land that you park cars on, what can you do? That's the reality, and I'm sure that the city fathers I'm sure they don't understand that.
Okay, we'll proceed and we'll.
Well, yeah, and he asked me questions, okay?
Yeah. Thank you. Questions?
I have no questions, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Soletsky.
Well, this is interesting. Didn't get a clear answer on what this zoning was of this property, but obviously it has other uses that would be permitted besides a parking lot, although I appreciate its location relative to the regular college. If this land were put up for sale, what would you be asking as a value?
Pardon?
As a value?
Oh, I don't know how much it's worth if you put up for sale. Like, I'd have to be, you can ask anything you like, it's how much people are gonna give to you, give it.
But you've never put it up for sale in the past?
No. We've had this piece of property since somewhere in the 50s or 60s, something like that. My father bought it because he worked for the federal government and his employees had nowhere to park. So he said, well, I better get somewhere where he weren't his employees, the people he was supervising. So he bought a parking lot, and he bought it from the city on a tax sale. Okay, so he bought this, it had an easement on it where for a sewer easement, so they couldn't build anything on it. One of the lots had a Chinese laundry on it, and so he allowed the Chinese laundry to run. When the city wanted to tear down the Chinese laundry, he went to city council and said, you can't tear down this laundry because this is the people's, this is history. So it was a long time ago.
So you're telling me there are restrictions on the property that would allow for it to be developed?
That there is a cloud on the title, yes. It has to do with the sewer easement.
Now, what was the reason for your clients moving off that lot, the city police?
The city police, the city of Winnipeg bought the post office building, and that became the new police force, a big controversial issue. And on top of that, the city had a parking structure that was falling apart. And so, I guess people couldn't park there. But it was the employees left. I mean, the city moved the police station from right beside City Hall, right beside this building. They moved it over to, what's St. Mary, you know where the police station is? Graham.
Yeah.
So they could, I mean, that's a long way for the people to walk. Interesting, a sidebar is that the neighborhood is so dangerous that the policemen were getting mugged on the streets. I mean, this is also, it's a dangerous neighborhood.
So, your income was dependent on the police station and the police parking.
That's right. That was our primary source of.
And that site is no longer just being redeveloped. Is it?
No, well, what's happened is that the land upon which the police station here, that's now vacant, was built, and the city hall, it has a caveat on the title too, and that is that the land can only be used for public purposes. I believe that that's the general wording. Is that not the case? The assessor would know, because that's your business.
That is correct.
Okay, so which means is that you can't put a commercial development on it. If you put a commercial development on it, I would think that you would have more people being able to.
Do you know what the city intends to do with that property?
I don't. What did the city intend to do with that?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
You're not aware?
No. No, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maurice, questions?
Yes, I was trying to see what you're asking, what amount you're looking for, because I've gone through this and I haven't seen this yet. So what did you have in mind, sir, as assessment?
As assessment, I think it should be the previous assessment, because it's continually gone down in value since that time, which was what was it assessed to before he comes? He asked me
Well,
the
we say
question that I should have the answer for.
563, is that what it is, 563,000? Or is it something else you're looking for?
I think it's the 563 is what it was assessed at in 2016 basis of assessment. Is that right? What is it?
Yes, that was the board reduction.
April 1st, 2014, okay. Okay, and so could you tell me how you justified your sworn value of $563,000 when you made the purchase? Was there an analysis made to arrive at that figure, or you just took the assessment?
We talked to the lawyer when we were putting the estate into probate, and they said that, they said, it was to the effect that's the value that if they were to dispute it, they would look at what it was, the market value was based on the city's numbers in order to establish the value. So if we said it was worth more than that or less than that, they wouldn't accept that, because they'd say, well, that's what you might speculate, but what's the numbers that it's assessed at?
So that's how that was arrived at?
That's right.
Okay, and I see you put forward a number of comparables here, different laws. Can you comment on that, or just you're just providing that as information? Because you broke it down per square feet and,
That's true, and so, thank you for asking that. As I was saying, that the value of the property is based on, you know, you figure out how much a square foot are you gonna pay for a piece of property, if you're gonna buy it. So I looked at the assessed values of these neighboring parking lots, and I discovered that they were assessed by and large at a lot less than what this parking lot that we have, that I have, my sister and I have. It's assessed at $68.31 a square. It comes out to having a value of $68.31 a square foot, where there's the big parking lot at 365 William, which in terms of being a piece of property that if you want to sell it, it would be desirable for a builder or a developer, because you've got a lot more square footage. And it is assessed at less money per square foot. It's at $55.50 a square foot. The only one that is assessed at a value that's close to my parking lot is the one right at the corner of Elgin Avenue and that's Princess, right? Which is the corner lot, which it also has less people parking in it now than I think they had parking in it before, but it's assessed at close to what this piece of property is assessed at, the Elgin parking lot is. So that's what essentially this data shows, is that the assessed value, when you look at it on a square foot basis, is it's $60 for our parking lot. The one right on the corner of Princess and Elgin is the same, and then all the others are quite a lot less. They range from $50 a square foot up to, well, there's one, the large one is 55. So it seems to me we're out of line, and that's what these numbers.
okay, that's what you were trying to show, because assessments are obviously not sales, and we have to take that into account because we don't know all the variables.
Yeah.
Now, just a question on the plugs, because we
Yes.
never got an answer. Is that all plugs for everybody?
That's plugged for people park, but sometimes the neighbor steals electricity from us, but.
No, that's a little extra.
That's right, that's what's it called, charity, right? Yes, we have plugs on it, and we have a light on it.
And your figures here, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'm asking
You
a
go
bunch of
right ahead.
questions. I'm looking at your revenue and expense summary on your yellow page 1, and I'm looking at, you see, we're looking at the 1st of April 2016 here as the benchmark to arrive at the assessment. And I was looking at the income in 2016, although it's the full year, 33,55922, and the expenses were 642757. That's what you've shown in the middle of the page here, sir? You follow me?
Please move my page here.
The first page?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so that was a statement provided to you by InPark?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and the revenue's gone down. I know we're post-reference, but it's there, so I'm going to ask anyway.
Yes, please.
So it's gone down in 2017?
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
And what was happening is the city was phasing out the moving of the police out of the building.
Okay, I think that's all, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir, I just have one question in regards to your page 1.
Yes.
Under your expenses for 2016, they looked, in 2015, they were 3,500 in post-reference. In 2017, they were 2,700, but in 2016, they had quite a jump to 64.
Yes, and that was what Impart gave to me. And I don't know, oh, wait, no. This is, I just asked them for their information.
That's fine.
Can't answer that.
That's fine.
I'm
No
sorry.
worries.
You're right, that's a question. I asked that, probably because it said that those are, they take care of the expenses, and if they gotta pay more, that's their problem. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I don't have.
So, thank you for coming today, and
Yeah.
leave it with us, and you will hear in a couple of weeks.
Is this all the information I should give you? Is there other stuff that I should get except for the 6,000?
No, you've got your brief here, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are just going to take a 5-minute break.
is ours, James? It's nice. It's a big guy.
Can you state your full name, please?
Sid Story.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Good morning, Mr. Story,
Good morning.
and whenever you're ready.
Thank you,
on
Madam Chair.
Main Street.
We're looking at file number 18-335, roll number 12-097-617-200. This is a parking structure, and it is located under sort of the rail line at the Forks. So if you want to get into this parking structure, you have to go into the Forks area and come into under the rail line on the north side of, so you would sort of be passing the Via Rail station, coming towards the actual Forks Market to go into this parking structure because it's located underneath the rail line. This parking structure, we had for a very long time on record, 85 stalls, but this was appealed it was not appealed in 2018 for the realty, and it had previously been appealed every cycle. And the stall count had never been contested, although it was appealed for the 2018 Board of Revision business assessment, and the stall count became a question. So I actually went out and counted the stalls on March 26, 2018, and confirmed that there are actually 70 stalls. So when I had the Board of Revision business assessment appeal, I had made a reduction to our modeled income value at the $70 a stall, which at the time was accepted. So as I said, this is a surface parking, or a parking structure, and we have 70 stalls. So I'm recommending to reduce the 2019 assessed value from $1,387,000 to $1,142,000. So on page 2, you'll just see an aerial photo of the parcel that's actually assessed. So this whole parcel in purple is what is assessed, but the parking is only under this small section that's on this lower portion. And on page 3, you'll see the entrance to the property. So it's this garage door that's right here. And you'll see that it's operated by FNP. On page 4, you'll see income and expense request information. And on page 5, you'll see the modeled income approach based on the recommendation of 70 stalls. So this is a heated parking structure, and we use a monthly net unit rent of $102 a stall. For an annual net rent of $85,680. For parking structures, we have a modeled cap rate of 7.5%. So our capitalized value for this property is $1,142,000. On the bottom of my page 5, you'll see a number of comparables. We have a very limited number of parking structures in the city of Winnipeg. Comparable number 1 is outside of the downtown, and it's at $67.13. So that's located in St. Boniface. It's a one-level 30-stall parking structure in a condo, office, apartment building sort of tower. You'll note that 299 Fort, comparable number 3, and 35 Albert, comparable number 11, are at $164.57 and $166.38 respectively. That's Winnipeg Square and at 201 Portage Avenue. So those are considered the highest quality of parking structures in the downtown. You'll note that we have a couple comparables that are heated parking structures, 223 James Avenue, comparable number 5, and 180 King, comparable number 6. They have $118.81 and $97.36 respectively. Those are located on sort of the outskirts of the downtown, on the outskirts of the Exchange. They're located just across the street from where we are today. So you'll note that the subject property has $102 because this is sort of a location that isn't in the heart of downtown where all the parking structures are in close proximity to, say, MTS Center and things like that. This is in close proximity to the Forks, but it is on the outskirts, so we have applied sort of an inferior model rate to this parking structure. On page number 6, you'll see gross rates that are applied to parking structures throughout the city of Winnipeg, and you'll note a number of them are heated, a number of them are unheated. And they have a large range in values, and so these are the gross monthly rates that are applied. On page 7, you'll see the income valuation summary. On page 8, you'll see cap rate information. Again, this is general cap rate information for a number of property types for the city of Winnipeg. And parking structures, the model across the board for all parking structures is 7.5%. On page 9, you'll see Municipal Assessment Act information. On page 10, you'll see the income and expense mailer for the subject property for 2015. And on page 12, you'll see the actual parking rates that are applied for the subject property. As I stated, this is operated by FNP, and they have a gross monthly rate of $170 a stall per month. On page 13, it's just the brief that I submitted for the business assessment, confirming that I made the same recommendation and the same net operating income for that. And then on page 14, you'll see the business assessment board of revision order showing that the recommendation was accepted. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Story, do you have any questions of the assessor?
Yes. Please. The structure is built in 1911.
We have an actual year built that ranges from 1911 to 1957 in our records.
Okay. And it's a wood frame.
According to our records, it says it's a wood frame and steel framed exterior walls.
Okay. And it's underneath the high line.
Yes, it's underneath the
Which
rail.
is underneath the rail tracks.
Yep.
And are any of your comms on land leases?
On land
Land
leases.
leases?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that
Okay.
because I haven't looked into it.
Are you aware that this is a land lease?
I'm aware that I've been told it's a land lease, but I've never actually seen any documentation
So
confirming.
you've
the
never
lease.
seen a lease?
No.
So you wouldn't know what the term is or any conditions of the lease?
Absolutely not.
And if you could, just for the board, you can explain your page 2, please, where the purple is all that assessment roll,
Yes.
but the only income recognized from that long assessment roll that goes all the way almost to Canvas Ballpark is for the under the high line, south of
Yes.
zero.
Just this portion on the bottom.
This is here, right here, right?
Yes, this sort of long triangular portion.
Okay.
Oh,
And then if you go to page 3, you'll see that there's an overhead door that takes you under that, under the high line, and that's the parking.
Mhm.
And that parking is primarily for the tenants of the Forks Market, is that correct?
I don't know who parks there, I just know that the Forks North Portage operates the parking lot.
And it's all, you're aware that it's all reserved by month, correct?
Yes,
And you indicated a couple of times it's heated,
yes.
and do you know who pays utilities?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that now.
And if I could just get you for just a moment, to go to your page 10,
Okay,
and this is the RFP filed by the Forks North Portage Development Corporation to the city of Winnipeg, correct? Or the questionnaire? I call it
Yes.
RFP. Questionnaire, RFP's in Calgary. And there it shows $135,000 in revenue and net income of $49,000 less business tax, about $45,000 NOI, correct?
that's what they've reported, correct.
Okay. Can you see anywhere on there where the utility costs are included?
They have not written down utility costs.
Okay. But you assume there would be some?
I would think so, possibly.
Any idea what they might be in a typical indoor parking structure heated?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that, though.
Okay. And the rent is the land rent, is that correct?
It just says rent, and without any further explanation, I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
So if you were in a hypothetical, because I suspect you're going to object to my submission, in a hypothetical, if the if one were to take this, and forget the business tax for now, the 49,000 in NOI at 7.5% would generate an assessment of 655,960. Is that sound reasonable?
Reasonable as
You
in
take the 49 off the
mathematically?
ARFI, yeah, off the ARFI, 49. There's a question there.
It'd be roughly 656,000 if you took the actual correct.
If you took the actual income.
What is reported?
Pardon me?
Yes, the actual being
Yeah.
reported.
And the forest is 1/3 owned by the city of Winnipeg. You aware of that? 3 levels of government? And if there was a very short-term termination clause in the lease, short-term being 90 days, would you still capitalize income based on a model for this particular, because you need parking structures or whatever?
Again, I've never been supplied any evidence with respect to a lease or shown any information for a lease, so I wouldn't be able to speak
Okay,
to
but in the questionnaire, they do show you that there's rent.
what that rent is for. It's not explained.
How much more did you, okay, all right. And I think that's, well, maybe I'll ask you one more quick question. Based on the 49,197, 70 stalls would be 703,000 NOI per stall per year. Do you agree with that? 49 divided by 70 would be 700, each stall generates $700.
If that's what you calculate.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sawatsky.
Can you give me a little bit of history on cap rates relative to parking lots?
Parking lots or parking structures? Both? Okay. Historically, for the 2018 and 2016 assessment cycles, the cap rate has remained unchanged. So for parking lots, we have 3 tiers of what our parking model is. We have an inner downtown, an outer downtown, and a suburban. The inner downtown and outer downtown have the same cap rate at 5%, and that was the same in 2016. And then for the suburban, it was at 6% for 2018 as well as 2016. I believe in 2014, the cap rate for the suburban, actually I'm not gonna speak to that because I don't have that information in front of me. So those cap rates have remained unchanged, as well as parking structures. They have remained at 7.5% for all parking structures across the city in 2018 and 2016. The reason being for parking structures is there are very, very few parking structures, standalone parking structures that the city of Winnipeg has. Furthermore, they don't really ever sell. The only sale of a parking structure in any recent history was in 2010 of 299 Fort. And 299 Fort sold at a reported 8% cap rate, but also 299 Fort had a number of issues with it. It had a large report that came along with it, an engineering report, indicating it had a lot of work that needed to be done. So when we look at parking structures, we have to look at the sort of one sale that we have and then look outside the box as to what sort of cap rates are being generated from actual sales of improved properties. So that's how we sort of look at when we develop our model for parking structure sales. For parking lots, on the other hand, parking lots are essentially vacant land. They don't have depreciating assets, they don't have a lot of capital costs that are involved in them. So when we have things like multifamily properties that our information is showing that they have a lot of reported sales at 5.5% for their cap rates, one would think that a parking lot that's essentially vacant land in the downtown would have a cap rate that's lower than an improved property that does have depreciating assets and does in fact have a lot of capital costs that need to be involved with it in upkeep. So that's how we sort of use it, because again, parking lots also, when they do sell, you have to look at all of the sales very carefully and with a grain of salt, because you have to look at what the purchase was for. So for example, 245 Graham, the Sky City parking lot. It's sold 12 months apart twice, once in 2013 and I believe once in 2015, and they sold with respectively about a 3% cap rate and a 1%. But that was sold for Sky City. So when you do look at these sales, a lot of the times when parking lots are selling in the downtown, they're not selling as a parking lot, and they're selling for development. So it is harder to find pure parking lot sales that have been sold purely for the motivation of operating a parking lot. So when you do look at all these sales, you do have to look at the motivations behind them, look at them very carefully with a grain of salt, and speak to the strengths and weaknesses of each of them. And then also look outside the box as to other cap rates, because when you have properties that aren't selling all the time, typical appraisers are going to look at other sales and use what they call appraisal theory and appraisal judgment to decide it's the sort of reasonable appraisal test, as they call it. How are you going to look at this and how are you going to justify it, and does it make sense? So if you're looking at multifamily properties that are selling at 5.5% of a cap rate, and you're looking at a bare piece of land essentially that doesn't have any depreciating assets, and you have vacant land that you're holding on to until you can redevelop it or sell it, but you're getting an income in the meantime, that's something that we see as having the lowest cap rate of improved properties. So that's how we've looked at our cap rate, and that's how it's been modeled at the City of Winnipeg.
So that's your rationale for 7.5 on this one.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you for the rest.
Sorry, I sort of sometimes forget when I have panel members who haven't sat on parking a lot that I realize I probably should have explained it a little bit better first
Madam Chair,
time.
could I do a follow-up, could I have a follow-up question?
No, wait till we finish our questions. Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Byrne?
Yeah, I've been trying to make sense of that mailer, because I had looked at that 49,000 as well, but I also looked at the income at 135,000, which is $193 per stall. I also see on the mailer that the rate is 165 per month for 70 stalls. And it looks, I'm not sure what January to October means in November or December, but I'm assuming it's year-round here. Now, in your experience, what would be a normal percentage of expenditures on a parking structure like this? I mean, that's a maybe guess, but I'm starting at 193 because that's what's there. And I want to see, because to me, that 49, I don't know what it means. There's been rent, there's maintenance, all kinds of stuff. Could you explain that to me, please?
I can't explain what's on the mailer. Generally, based on looking at this mailer, they have a very high expense ratio that is shown on their mailers. There are a number of expenses missing, as Mr. Story had stated. But the typical modeled expense ratio, looking at our parking structures from the City of Winnipeg for the 2018 reassessment, was 55%.
55?
And if you look at my page 5 on my comparables that are shown on the bottom page, it shows a range of expense ratios for a number of parking structures that we have provided as comparables. And they range from 30% upwards of 48%.
Okay, so you're saying a ballpark would be 55?
That was our modeled expense ratio, correct?
Okay. Not really where my question was, because I think the rest is pretty straightforward for me. Thank you.
Thank you. So you indicated that you went, I'm assuming you yourself went into this structure in March of 18.
I personally went into this structure. I couldn't get in, so I actually had to go to the Forks North Portage office and talk to the receptionist. And then she had a security guard meet me, and he came in and he walked through the site with me. I took a number of pictures. I counted all the stalls. I made notes as to sort of what was going on. There's a lot of stuff down there. In addition to parking, there's a lot of storage for, there was canoes down there, there were hot dog carts down there. So there was a lot of fenced off areas that were used as storage. There's also a workshop down there where a number of people were working on things. So there were a lot of things happening down there, but stalls alone, I counted 70 stalls.
Okay, and previously they had been at 85.
Yes, that's what we had on record, and no one had ever contested it. And typically, if no one's contesting a stall count, we don't really go out and count them because it had always been accepted. This was appealed by the current applicant in 2016, and that stall count hadn't been contested until the business assessment of 2018, so that's why we did our due diligence and went out and actually counted them. Because when they make a comment and say, there's a question of the stall count, I look at the mailer and I say, okay, there is a discrepancy in the stall count, let's go take a look at this.
Right. So you've got down here on your brief, page 1, the actual year that the structure was built was 1911.
Yes, this is 1911 to 1957, so we obviously have a number of different building records in our system on this property, so that's our range of actual years.
So the actual parking structure itself, is that 1911?
I wouldn't be able to speak to which age is the actual parking structure itself because it's all sort of the rail line.
It's over 100 years old. Holy smokes. I'm assuming too with the, is there any leeway given at all with the railway above it? I can only imagine what the vibration does to it.
I was under there for probably about an hour and I didn't notice anything, but again, it is a parking lot, it is a legal use, no one's ever came and closed it, so I would assume that they're doing their due diligence, upkeeping it to make sure that it's safe for everybody using the parking structure.
Okay, and you're giving a 55% expense ratio on this?
The 55% is what has been modeled. We haven't applied a 55% because when we value parking, we develop our net parking stalls. So what we do is we take the net NOIs that are shown on the mailers, we model those down to a per stall rate on a monthly basis, and then we model the net rates. We also separately model the expense ratio for informational purposes. So this modeled rate of $102 was based on the net operating incomes per stall per month that have been modeled, that have been reported. We don't actually model a gross, then work out an expense ratio and come up with our net. Our net is based strictly on the nets that are reported.
So on page 5 of your brief, just curious, under your rent comparables.
Yep.
Which do you think would be the best comparable property?
I think the best comparables are probably 223 James and 180 King for locational purposes. 180 King has $180 that they rent for. 223 James has $220 that they rent for. There's no casual parking on those parking structures, very similar to the subject. They're both sort of further away and only really have one draw. 180 King and 223 James, a majority of the people that park there are the people that work in the buildings above. And at Forks North Portage, as Mr. Story indicated, the people who apparently park there are the people who work in the building.
Right.
It is both, all of these lots are advertised on separate parking websites, so FNP is the subject lot. Comparables number 5 and 6 at 223 James and 180 King, those are both operated by Impark. So I believe that those are probably the best comparables because like I said, when you look at something like 147 Provencher, it's a little bit further away. 295 Memorial is the Bay Parkade, which has a number of structural issues that it's dealing with currently. 299 Fort, 35 Albert are really good, and they're like the premier parking structures in the city of Winnipeg. And then a number of the other ones are sort of unheated in better locations.
Yeah. So do you know the age of then number 5 and number 6, James and King?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that because I don't have those briefs in front of me. I apologize for that.
Okay. Thank you, that's all my questions. Mr. Story, if you'd like to give us your presentation.
I have a couple of questions.
Oh, you wanted to readdress, that's right.
You mentioned cap rate, and does the fact that there's a land lease here with a 90-day termination without cause, does that impact the cap rate, in your opinion?
Again, without looking at the lease and looking at it in full, I wouldn't be able to speak to the impact a lease has because at this point it's just sort of a lease that you've told me about. I would need to actually review the lease in full, and it's never actually been submitted as evidence prior to a hearing.
Why hasn't it been asked for by the department?
This has been under appeal a number of cycles and it's never actually been provided.
And just getting back to your question from the chair about the age of the building, CN built the rail line before that. They didn't come along and build underneath the rail line. So it's from 1911. Would you agree? You know where it is. It's
It's under the rail line. The rail line's been there since 1911.
what I'm
So
saying
they
is
didn't
we
come
have,
and dig out underneath the rail line to put in a
I'm
bunch of
aware,
surface parking.
but if you look at my brief on page 1, the actual years built say 1911 to 1957, and that is what the information in our system has, and without me going in and looking at what each section of those buildings are, I
Okay.
can't actually speak
And
to
what
that.
was the physical condition of the building when you inspected it? Do you have any comments on it?
It wasn't a premier pristine parking structure, that's for sure. It definitely wasn't a brand new parking structure. And as I stated, we have applied a sort of below average rate to the property for the assessment because if I have it in front of me, if you give me a moment, like I said, due to its location and due to the quality of the parking structure and the age, we have applied, I apologize for not having this more organized. You'll have to bear with me just because I know that I have this, but apparently I have
What are
to.
you looking for?
I'm looking for our modeled rates, so I was going to actually say what our average rate for parking structures are. Okay, so for the 2018 reassessment, for heated structures, they range from $84 to $156 a stall. The average rate being $120 a stall for heated parking. Because of its sort of location as well as quality of the structure, we have applied a below average rate of $102 because typically parking structures are getting $120 or higher per stall. And so we've already applied the 102. And actually surface parking lots in close proximity to this parking structure are all assessed at $103.50. And that's a surface parking lot. So we have sort of recognized that there is some limitations with this as well as that it is an older property.
And it's heated.
It is.
Okay.
Are we moving on to your presentation
Yes.
now?
Yes,
So
Okay.
do we have a brief of the appellant, Madam Chair?
Yeah, he's got,
You don't have one?
he's got things to
Yeah.
hand out.
And I brought, I know you don't want to read it, but I brought them copies of the leases.
Madam Chair, would it be possible for me to take a look at it first before Mr. Story hands it out? Just because if he's handing it out, I would think that it's in rebuttal to something in my brief and not
Yes,
new
it is.
information.
Yeah,
That's fine.
it's all in
Would that be
the-
okay?
That should be nice, no, 4, yeah, 5, 4.
I thought we were gonna be doing this treeless. That's the other one.
Madam Chairman, I don't want to be a pain, but this all looks like a brief that should have been submitted at the exchange 2 weeks ago, because this looks very similar to anything Mr. Story would submit as appeal evidence. We have assessment workups, we have information in here with respect to leases. All of this would have been very pertinent information for me to have a couple weeks ago, and I just feel like this isn't really in rebuttal. This is a roundabout way of submitting a brief that was not submitted on time.
And I'll answer that by saying on page 4, which is a
Sorry,
workup.
but Mr. Story, did you not submit anything?
No, we did not. We did not. This was advanced late. There was no appeal in 218 at the request of the landlord. The landlord in this is via and/or CN. And it was requested because the assessment appeals are all being cleaned up at the fort, which is a potential redevelopment. And it came late. So we applied late. No, we did not.
And
So
this-
Ms. Wareham has not had anything to look at.
This is her information.
Mr.
This is, page 4 is from the, is right off, just showing the comparison between the actual and what the city is modeling. And then the other is the actual financial statements, which were in the questionnaire but not included in the brief. And they're the same number, 135. And then there was a key element in this is the lease.
Okay,
Because it was
you know what?
is it rent,
I'm
is
gonna
it-
take a 5-minute
Okay.
recess right now. Thank you.
May I just state one more thing, Madam Chair, before we recess, if
Yeah.
that's okay? Mr. Story and myself have talked about this property probably a week and a half ago, and he did have ample opportunity to send me something for this. I'm not gonna get into the particulars of the conversation, obviously, as it was without prejudice, but there was time for him to submit something, and this was appealed in 2018 for the business assessment, which Mr. Story himself accepted our NOI on.
And if I may just state, you were off last week, Ms. Worm, I called yesterday with an urgent call.
I was
and
off
you-
one
and
day,
you
and it was
didn't call me
yesterday.
back. So I can only do what I can do, and so I'm here to rebut some of their information. And I think we're entitled to that. For God's sakes, the shareholder is the city of Winnipeg. Why are we fighting with the city of Winnipeg?
Yeah, we'll just take a moment. Thank you. So, Mr. Story, after some deliberation, I'm sorry, but we are not going to be accepting your brief at
That's
this
fine.
time.
Okay,
If you
I'll
wish
just
to
go
give
through it.
some verbal,
yes, absolutely.
and if you could be brief and
I won't be
succinct.
brief in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, what we've done is, we've looked at the questionnaire that was filed with the city of Winnipeg. This is a very, very complicated property and historically hasn't necessarily been appealed every cycle at the request of CN, who are the recipient of the income, but they've leased out all the rail side corridor across Canada to VIA. So there's a dispute as to who actually is entitled to this rental revenue. In addition to that, you'll see in the questionnaire that there is no allowance for any water, gas, or hydro. And that's because it's an old building, it's under train tracks, it's a separately metered, it's probably too expensive. So a decision was made some 25 years ago to include the utilities in that rent. So the rental figure includes utilities. The property was, when the Forks North Portage development came to fruition, almost 30 years ago, the CN employees had a gymnasium in what are now the Forks Market building. What they did is they said, we have a storage shed, we can put your CN employees' gym in the storage shed. And so that space became used by the CN employees to replace them getting kicked out of the Forks Market building itself. And then that was hardly used, and so the Forks made an arrangement with CN that they would lease it on a 90-day cancellation by either party without cause. So you've got to think about that. And it's also there, it's operating, it's grandfathered. It's allowed to be used because eminent domain, because the shareholders of the Forks are the three levels of government. So they're allowed to allow the use, but you couldn't sell it. Nobody could buy it. How could you buy into the railroad tracks? So that's just a little bit to do, but we're accepting the city's cap rate. The fact is, there is no cap rate. There's no land. It's an old building. It's supporting the railroad tracks. You can't sell it. Nobody else can ever own it. But we're accepting the 7.5. But our real question is, the actual revenue we have. This is a unique property. It's a building built in 1911. It's wood frame. Has extraordinary heating costs. It has repair and maintenance costs because of age and because of construction type. It's wood frame. So we're suggesting that the only way to value this is the actual income. The actual income that it generates. You got to remember, it should be done on 90 days. We should be dividing this by 4, whatever the amount is. But there are 70 stalls. The reason there's 70, it used to be 85, but they used to store their equipment and repair it, which is what they were working on when you saw them, behind Muddy Waters. So there's a building where Muddy Waters is, and the back end of it had storage, or had equipment storage before for the ice rink and whatnot. They moved that over a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's what gave rise to the fewer stalls. They put in some storage, which Lindsay mentioned. Those were the original storage sheds of the railroad when it was built. So $49,000 is the actual revenue. That's what it earns. And it can be canceled on 90-day notice. We've got copies of the lease here. We have the amendment to the lease. And on that basis, taking 135, and if you look at the income on this property doesn't change from month to month, because there's, as Lindsay indicated, there's a waiting list for these stalls of the tenants of the Forks Market, because if they have to go to work, they can't park without any tickets on the Forks site, so they need some kind of long-term parking, and they need some proximity to the building, so they park here, and they're primarily held for the tenants. And the revenue is consistent. It's $135,000, $270,000. The expenses are $90,390, including $20,000 a year in rent. That includes the utilities. So the actual income before expenses is 35,191. Oh, pardon me, 215. The actual expenses are 125,581 and 216, 215, sorry. Yeah, the actual income is 49,197, sorry about that. Right off of the questionnaire. Capitalized at 7.5 is 655,960. I respectfully submit that that should be the assessment on this property. The actual financials show realty taxes are 27,000, business taxes, repair and maintenance are 19,000, which is not a lot for, this is not a surface parking lot. This is a heated parking structure with water and salt and all that stuff. And the repair and maintenance are not extraordinary, in my opinion, based on the age of the property particularly. Insurance is 5,500, can't do much with that. The rent's 20,000. Remember that there's no land value to this. The land is under an easement. There's an easement right across Canada for these rail lines. And then the management is based on, they take the total parking revenue from the forks and they divide it by the gross to get to a management fee, and they allocate the actual management fee, pardon me, the percentage is $8,900. So the NOI is 49,197. It's the only way you can value this property, is what it actually generates. Because it can be canceled tomorrow. The lease can be canceled with 90-day notice. And that's 655,960. The reason that this one is mentioned about property being appealed and not being appealed, there's a potential for the railside yards, which are not far from this property, to be developed, and to be developed under what's called a TIF, which is a tax incentive program. And to do that, municipal board matters have to be cleared up, and some of these properties have to be dealt with that weren't dealt with over the years because of the 3 levels that are involved. CN believe they're entitled to the rental revenue. VIA, under their land lease, think they should be getting it, and the forks are just paying it. So I respectfully submit that we use the actuals. The 7.5 is probably on the low side. There's nothing to sell here. There's no land that you can sell. It's under an easement. You'll see in the lease that the property is grandfathered, they say. The occupancy of it is grandfathered. Well, that means that the city is allowing it. There's no variance, because you can't get a variance when you have the easement. So if there was a variance, it would be expired, because they don't go forever. And if it were expired, then they would be occupying the space illegally. But because it's owned by the 3 levels of government, they're allowed to operate there. It's permissible. So I respectfully submit that because of the nature of it, it's a very unique property. It's an old property. It's filling a need. That when the Forks introduced this paid parking on the site, and all of a sudden the tenants have to find a place to park, and this, when you're hauling groceries and whatnot, this was deemed to be appropriate, so that they have the first right of refusal on this stuff. And they do charge right now, you see by the sign, I think they're charging $175 a month. They're monthly, they put a sign up. And that's all I've got, if you don't want to see my lease and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few questions. Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Story, you're requesting to use the actual income of $49,197 at a cap rate of 7.5%
Yes.
to come up with $655,960. Does that mean you're requesting $656,000?
You're rounding.
Well, that's
Is that a
how.
question? Sure, rounding.
I'm just saying that's how, I'm trying to make, you can request $655,960, but I was just.
Whatever you're comfortable with. My numbers.
I'm just trying to write down what you're requesting.
Do you want to round or not?
I'm just trying to make sure I
You do the
was
calculus,
clear.
$655,960.
That's what you're requesting?
Yeah.
Perfect. My next question is, looking at the mailer in my brief that was submitted,
Yeah.
on page 11,
Yeah.
it was filled out by an Ingrid Bergman.
Yes.
And she works for FNP, correct?
Yes, she's.
Okay, so Forks North Portage is the business that is occupying that property?
Pardon me, no, it's occupied by individual parkers, but they're like a head lease.
Yeah,
So they pay via rail, and, or pardon, they pay at CN, and they in turn lease
But
it out
it's-
to their
it's
tenants.
Forks North Portage.
Yeah, Forks North Portage Development. Corporation.
And you also indicated that Forks North Portage had moved their storage and their workshop into that, which had reduced the stall count, is that correct?
So the stall count was reduced because there's now some storage and maintenance being done in what used to be the parking lot, parking garage. I believe
Okay.
that's why, why the
So,
stall count changed.
I think that's what I just said.
Yeah.
But that's Forks North Portage's storage, correct?
What do you,
Whose storage is
Forks
it?
North Portage?
So, okay, thank
Yeah.
you for confirming that for
They're
me.
paying rent.
So they're paying rent on the storage space?
Yes, they're paying rent for the, under the High Line, they're paying $20,000 a year under the High Line. If they want to use it for parking, they can. If they want to use it for storage, they can. If they want to have a hoedown there, they can. It's a storage garage. that
Does
they're
a
parking.
hoedown create any parking income for the revenue for the structure?
No, but you get just daily, you get corkage.
I think my question though, Mr. Story, is when there is storage space in a building, typically there's a revenue derived for that storage space, correct?
Yeah,
People
because
will
that's an
rent storage.
expense, they're paying rent. That's why they pay rent.
Okay, so my next question is, Forks North Portage is the business that is occupying that space. Forks North Portage were the people that appealed the business assessment in 2018, which you then accepted at our $85,680. So my question to you is, if the mailer for Forks North Portage had said $49,194.65, why did you accept that NOI in the business assessment for Forks North Portage 2 months ago?
I don't, quite honestly, I don't recall, but it was 100 and something, and I think there was a recommendation, and we accepted the recommendation. That's the situation.
Those are my questions. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Sawatsky.
I only have one question, and that relates to the lease. You say there's this 90-day cancellation. Has it ever happened?
Has it been canceled?
Yeah.
No, they're still there. They've been there since the Forks was put together about 30 years ago.
Okay, so there's a waiting list, and this 90-day cancellation thing, and the lease has never been.
No, they wouldn't be there if they had terminated it. I can read it for you verbatim if you
Oh,
want.
that's fine, thank you.
At any time, the landlord or tenant by providing not less than 90 days written notice. It's almost an interim use.
Thank you, no questions.
Thank you. Maurice?
I just had one on the comment you made on the mailer. Utilities maintenance, you mentioned that there was no provision made for water, sewer, and so on, basically, is
Utilities.
what you made that statement. I'm just gonna finish, sir. But then, I believe you said that the rent included that. So, to me, that was a bit contradictory in the sense that you said there was nothing, but then I believe you said that in the rent it included that.
That's what I said, there's nothing in the lines,
Yeah.
because it's paid by the CN as part of the rent. And the reason is they made a decision that it would cost more to put in separate meters and whatnot than to just leave it, so they pay it. So when they pay 20,000, some portion of it is utilities, some portion is rent.
Okay, that's all, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Story, this is monthly parking then, no casual, correct?
Monthly parking, no casual, correct.
Okay, and there is a waiting list, so it is.
Well, there's a waiting list because it's for the, if you're a tenant
Right.
at the Forks, you want to be as close as you can to all your groceries.
Of course,
So yes, there's a waiting list.
okay. And is it exclusively for the tenants of the Forks?
I think so, as far as I know, but I could be wrong. As far as I know, it
Okay,
is because some of the tenants, they pay for it, but they required as part of their lease. We just did, the wine store has to bring product in, so they have to be close enough. So they require that there be 2 or 3 spaces. So I think the spaces are in great demand because of the proximity to the building. Otherwise, they'd be getting parking tickets every day.
so, and on the mailer, it said there was close to $20,000 for maintenance.
Yeah,
Do you know what that involved?
yes, it's just, you've got to keep redo floors and things of that nature. It's a 108-year-old building. It's a wood frame. It does, I don't know when this worm goes there, but there's 22 trains go across that every day, and it rumbles. There's no question it rumbles, so I don't know how that particular day that she was there didn't rumble. Not that it matters, but it's subject, you have to repair that stuff because it does have some vibration. And water and salt is a killer for heated parking. So these are not out of line on a per stall basis.
No.
I handle Winnipeg Square, Parkade, I handle 3 on McDermott, and I don't think it's out of line, especially for a wooden building.
Right.
It
Okay.
wasn't made to be a parkade either, it wasn't designed.
Have you yourself been in this structure?
Yeah, I was the first tenant at the Fort, so I've been in probably, I was there when it was a gymnasium, I was there initially when it was storage, then when it was a gymnasium, and then when it was parking. Yes, I have.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions,
Thank you.
and leave it with us.
Liability?
Oh, right, there's a liability that,
We'll pull that, that's.
Did you want
I
to
might
withdraw
explain
that?
it if I could, is what happened, yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Marcello, who's here, handles their company handles the VIA and CN matters across Canada. And there was a request by VIA that everything be put on hold until they sorted out this legal matters to who's really entitled to the money. So we wondered about the liability for tax, and so, but we'll withdraw.
Okay, thank you.
You okay with that?
I'll have to go grab a form.
A
Did you
form?
want to do that now?
Sure.
Form?
Yeah, I have to go get it. Okay. We're gonna shut this off.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good luck with your baby. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our,
Do we have to put
We
this
have
on
to
the
address
record?
the,
We have to
but we
address.
don't want to,
No, we can just only say there's no,
oh, all right,
It'll be on the
but
record
it is on
somewhere.
the docket, yeah.
okay. And the first property on the docket, there is no respondent for that today, so correct. That concludes our hearing. Thank you.